Imagine being locked inside a concrete cell, walls taller than a man, with no sunlight for weeks, months, maybe years. You've heard of ADX Florence, the prison nicknamed the Alcatraz of the Rockies. America's most secure prison. But today, we're not talking about the guards, the cells, or the escapes. Today, we're talking about something far closer to the prisoners themselves. Something they must endure every single day. Their meals. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. 3 cold, monotonous trays that arrive like clockwork. Yet behind the metal lids, behind the bland mashed potatoes and gray beans, lies a story most outsiders could never imagine. Some meals are so tasteless, so mind-numbing, that prisoners have said they'd rather go hungry. Others hide secrets that could shatter your perception of prison life entirely. It was a night much like any other when one prisoner opened his tray, and what he found would become a story whispered through the cell blocks for months. A meal that was ordinary, yet terrifying. A tray that changed everything. This is a story of what prisoners really eat in ADX Florence. When you first arrive at ADX Florence, the cold hits you before anything else. The Colorado wind cuts through your coat, and the concrete walls loom over every step. Inside, the cells are small, less than 80 square feet, with nothing but a metal bed, a toilet, and a sink. You are alone, 23 hours of isolation every day. And then there's the food. The first tray they give you feels like a test. A bland, gray lump of meat, a scoop of watery beans, a thin slice of bread. Nothing fresh, no vegetables, no fruits. Just enough to keep you alive. The guards watch as you eat. Every movement recorded. Any complaint can land you in solitary confinement, even worse than the cell you already occupy. For many, the first meal is more than food. It's a shock. Your body wants energy, your mind wants comfort, but the prison offers neither. Days turn into weeks. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. The repetition gnaws at your sanity. Cold cereal for breakfast, beans and meat for lunch, mashed potatoes and a thin broth for dinner. Some prisoners try to spice it up, mix sugar into the mashed potatoes, trade packets of ketchup. But no matter what you do, the monotony weighs heavily. Prisoners learn quickly. Food isn't a pleasure here. It's a tool, a symbol of control. Even the smallest indulgence can be denied. Even the smallest complaint can have consequences. And yet, strange things sometimes happen with these meals. Trays are missing items. Drinks are spilled. Once, a prisoner claimed to find a hair in his soup. Another time, a strange object appeared in a tray, hidden beneath the beans. Whispers spread fast. Every bite became a gamble. It was dinner when the incident occurred. A prisoner named Harris received his tray, gray beans, a slab of meat, dry bread. He picked up his fork, took a bite, and froze. Something wasn't right. Hidden inside the beans was a small, sharp object. Guards were alerted immediately. Harris was taken away. The tray was confiscated. Silence filled the cell block. Prisoners stared at each other, hearts racing. Was it an accident? A sabotage? No one knew. The kitchen continued to operate as if nothing had happened. But for the prisoners, one thought echoed in every cell. Even the food could be dangerous. From that night on, meals were no longer just bland and monotonous. They became a test of caution, endurance, and survival. Every tray, every bite, every spoonful was a reminder. In ADX Florence, even food could break you. Hunger isn't just about an empty stomach here. It's about mind and body. Some prisoners lose weight quickly. Others become irritable, snapping at even the smallest provocation. And yet, no matter how desperate, they cannot escape. The monotony, the isolation, the bland meals, it all adds up. But the tray incident proved something else. Something darker. There are secrets in every tray. Some prisoners claim that what happens inside the kitchen is worse than anything outside. And just when you think the worst has passed, the next tray arrives, and a new horror may be waiting. Something that could shock everyone. Something that would leave prisoners questioning their survival all over again. After the tray incident, life inside ADX Florence didn't slow down. If anything, the tension grew. Prisoners walked through the corridors quietly, each step measured. Every tray of food that slid through the slot in the steel door was greeted with a mix of relief and dread. Some inmates adapted. They learned small tricks, mixing the tasteless beans with a packet of sugar or saving bread to trade for small favors. Others turned inward, staring at the wall for hours, trying to ignore the growling hunger in their stomachs. The food may have been bland, but it was consistent. And in a place like ADX, consistency can be as much a blessing as a curse. It reminded everyone that while their world was controlled, there was some order, just enough to survive, or so they thought. Prisoners quickly discovered that survival meant creativity. A loaf of dry bread could be torn into pieces and softened with water. A thin slice of meat could be sliced into smaller portions to stretch for extra meals. Every meal became a puzzle, how to make something edible from what was given. But sometimes ingenuity wasn't enough. One prisoner, known as Daniels, attempted to make a soup from leftover mashed potatoes and beans. What should have been harmless experimentation turned into chaos. The mixture fermented in his small cup, producing a smell so foul it drew the attention of the guards. He was punished, but the story spread through the cell block. Food wasn't just sustenance, it was survival, discipline, and danger all in one. Then came another shocking event. A prisoner named Jefferson, known for bending the rules carefully, tried to smuggle a piece of bread to another cell. He hid it under his blanket during roll call. But when the guard discovered it, they didn't just take the bread. They discovered small crumbs of something far more alarming. The crumbs were tested, and it turned out that someone had tried to hide a small metal fragment inside the food. No one knew who had done it, or why. The prisoners whispered rumors. Some said it was a warning. Others feared it was a failed attempt at something far worse. Jefferson was isolated, and the rest of the prisoners stared at their trays with new suspicion. No longer could they simply eat. They had to watch, check, and sometimes reject the food entirely. Every bite was a test of trust, endurance, and sanity. Days blurred into weeks. Hunger became more than a physical sensation. It turned into an obsession. Prisoners obsessed over every morsel, inspecting trays like detectives. Some chewed slowly, savoring the smallest flavors. Others tried to stretch a portion into 2 meals. And yet, the prison continued its relentless routine. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner arrived, predictable yet full of hidden dangers. The monotony created tension, and the tension often exploded into small conflicts over food. But nothing could prepare the prisoners for the next extreme event, something that would make everyone question the safety of even the most ordinary meal. One tray, one bite, one moment, and the cell block would never be the same. It happened just after lights out. Prisoners who were allowed a small cup of broth or soup discovered something unusual. A prisoner named Morales took a sip and nearly gagged. Something sharp and metallic had been hidden in the soup. It wasn't large enough to cause serious injury, but it sent a wave of fear through every inmate who had touched that tray. The guards launched an investigation. The prisoners whispered rumors, sabotage, mistake, or a cruel test. Some said it was a warning from the administration to remind them that even their most private moments, mealtime, sleep, were under scrutiny. The midnight soup horror changed everything. No longer could prisoners trust what arrived on their trays. Every bite could hold a secret. Every meal could be a trap. And yet, they had no choice but to eat. Survival demanded it. After the midnight soup horror, the cell block felt different. Silence was heavier. Prisoners no longer approached their trays casually. Every movement was calculated, every bite examined. Morale was low. The monotony of meals combined with the constant fear of hidden object began to wear down even the strongest minds. Some prisoners stared at their gray beans for minutes before taking a single spoonful, questioning what might be hidden beneath the bland surface. Even guards noticed a shift. The once routine clatter of trays now echoed with anxiety. In ADX Florence, hunger was no longer just physical. It had become a weapon of fear. Prisoners quickly developed ways to cope. Some washed their food thoroughly under the tiny sink, inspecting every bite. Others mashed bland meat into the beans, hoping to disguise foreign objects or chemicals. One inmate, Ramirez, became known for his inspection ritual, spending hours checking trays before eating. He would lift every bean, examine every piece of bread, and even sniff the soup carefully. For him, paranoia wasn't a choice, it was survival. Small act of ingenuity became the difference between safety and danger. Yet even with caution, fear lingered like a shadow over every meal. Then came another incident. During lunch, a prisoner named Collins opened his tray and froze. Hidden in the mashed potatoes was a tiny, sharp fragment of metal. The clatter of the tray hitting the floor alerted the guards immediately. Collins was taken for questioning, but whispers spread through the block faster than the guards could react. Was it sabotage by another inmate? A mistake in the kitchen? Or something more sinister? The prisoners learned one undeniable fact. At ADX Florence, even a simple meal could be lethal. Every bite carried the possibility of danger. And for the first time, some wondered if surviving the food itself might be harder than surviving the prison guards. As weeks went by, hunger became obsession, and obsession bred desperation. Some prisoners began hoarding bits of bread, rationing beans, or trading small portions in secret. Arguments over food flared more frequently, sometimes spilling into minor conflicts in the cell blocks. Yet, the real danger wasn't the arguments, it was the unknown. Each tray could be a trap. Every meal could contain an object meant to harm, scare, or test them. Prisoners began eating less, afraid that each bite might carry consequences far worse than hunger. The breaking point came one late evening when a prisoner, Morales, accepted a small cup of porridge. It smelled normal, just bland and watery, but the moment he took a sip, he felt something sharp cut his tongue. Blood mixed with the bland porridge. The alarms rang immediately. Guards rushed to the cell. Morales survived, but the fear in the cell block reached new heights. From that night onward, prisoners approached every tray with suspicion, inspecting, poking, and even avoiding certain foods. No one knew if the next bite would be safe, or if survival itself would hinge on the food they ate. After the spiked porridge incident, the fear inside ADX Florence thickened like the cold Colorado air. The prisoners were quieter now. Even the sound of a metal tray sliding across the floor made them flinch. No one trusted the kitchen anymore. No one trusted the trays. And no one trusted each other. Prisoners kept their eyes lowered during meal delivery. Each man inspected his tray with a shaking hand, half expecting to find something sharp or dangerous. Even the guards sensed a tension. Something dark was brewing beneath the surface. But the meals kept coming, and the fear kept growing. As the anxiety grew, prisoners began sharing secrets quietly between cells. At ADX, communication was nearly impossible, but not completely. A few soft taps on the wall, a smuggled note hidden under a tray, a whisper carried through the ventilation. They called it the Food Whisper Network. Each day, prisoners warned each other about strange smells, odd textures, or missing items on their trays. Someone said the beans tasted sour. Someone else said the meat was colder than usual. Others said they found strange marks on their bread. Most of it was rumor, but some of it was real. And rumors were all the prisoners had to protect themselves. One morning, something unusual happened. A prisoner named Collins refused to eat anything at all. He pushed his tray away and sat in the corner of his cell, arms crossed, eyes hollow. The guards thought he was staging a protest. But the truth was far simpler. He was scared. Too scared to take even a single bite. Hours passed. Collins became weaker. He pressed his back to the wall, watching the untouched tray as if it were a ticking bomb. By nightfall, he had gone almost an entire day without food. The other prisoners heard him coughing softly in the darkness, afraid and hungry, and everyone wondered the same thing. If the food couldn't be trusted, how could anyone survive? Despite everything, life inside ADX marched on. Breakfast at 5 a.m., lunch at 11, dinner at 4, the same bland gray beans, the same dry bread, the same thin slices of meat. Prisoners forced themselves to eat, even if every bite felt like a risk. They learned to break food apart with the ends of their toothbrush handles, checking every piece. They learned to smell the soup before drinking it. They learned to chew slowly, carefully, ready to spit out anything suspicious. Even fear became part of their routine. And still, something worse was waiting for them. It happened during dinner. A prisoner named Harris lifted the lid off his tray and froze. The slab of meat on his plate, it wasn't the usual bland, pale color. It was darker, slick, and giving off a smell that made his stomach twist. Harris poked it lightly with his fork. The meat dipped inward like wet clay. A sour odor filled the cell. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. He yelled for the guards, slamming the tray against the metal door. The entire block heard the panic in his voice. Within minutes, guards rushed in. The meat was taken away. Harris was questioned. Prisoners watched from their tiny windows, eyes wide with fear. Was it spoiled? Was it tampered with? Was someone trying to send a message? No one knew. But tonight, every prisoner stared at their tray wondering. If the meat was rotten in his cell, could their food be dangerous too? Hunger, fear, and suspicion spread through the block like wildfire, and no one knew what the next tray would bring. Dinner time at ADX Florence is usually quiet. The guards slide the trays in, the prisoners eat fast, and the night moves on. But on this night, the silence broke. Harris, a tall, calm inmate who rarely complained, lifted the lid of his dinner tray and smelled something strange, something sharp, something rotten. He leaned closer, and his face twisted in disgust. The smell was so strong it crawled into the walls of the cell. Even prisoners 2 cells away could sense something was wrong. Harris whispered, "What is this?" And for the first time in years, real fear spread through his voice. Harris took his fork and poked the meat gently. The slab bent inward, soft like wet mud. Not normal, not safe, not even food. The color was darker than anything they had ever been served. A sickly brown, wet, shiny, and wrong in every possible way. Harris jumped back from the tray. His stomach rolled. His hands started shaking. He slammed the tray against the cell door and shouted for the guards. His voice echoed down the hallway like a warning siren. Metal doors rattled as prisoners banged and yelled. What happened? What's wrong with the food? Is someone poisoning us? From their tiny windows, inmates watched the guards sprint toward Harris's cell. More guards followed, flashlights out, radios buzzing. One guard opened the door. Another snapped on gloves. A third bagged the rotten meat like evidence from a crime scene. Harris kept repeating, "That wasn't normal. That wasn't normal. Something's going on." And in ADX, when a prisoner says that, everybody listens. Word spread fast, faster than any guard could stop it. Did the kitchen mess up? Was the food spoiled? Or did someone slip something into the tray? On purpose? Whispers turned into fear. Fear turned into suspicion. And suspicion turned into silence. Because in a place like ADX Florence, silence is the loudest warning of all. That night, dozens of prisoners pushed their trays away, too scared to take a bite. Even hunger couldn't beat the fear of the unknown. But then, just when the block finally started to calm down, a blood-chilling scream echoed from the far end of the hallway. A scream that did not belong to Harris. A scream that meant something much worse had just happened. The scream came from the far end of the hallway. Deep, sharp, and filled with pain. Every prisoner stopped moving. Every voice died out. Even the guards froze for a second. In ADX Florence, people don't scream unless something is very wrong. A guard shouted, "Who was that?" But no one answered. Only the echo replied, bouncing off concrete walls like a ghost trapped inside metal. The scream had come from cell 38, a cell belonging to a man known for being silent, very silent. The inmate in cell 38 was Ramirez. For 5 years, he barely spoke a word. He ate quietly, slept quietly, lived like a shadow. Some prisoners said Ramirez read books all day. Others swore he wrote secret letters he never sent. But everyone agreed on one thing. Ramirez didn't scream. Not ever. So when the guards ran to his cell, hearts pounding, flashlights trembling, they expected to find someone attacking him, or maybe even trying to break in. But what they found made every guard step back. Ramirez's dinner tray sat untouched on the floor. The lid was still closed. The cup of water still full. But something was wrong. Ramirez was on his knees, shaking uncontrollably. He pointed at the tray with a trembling finger, unable to speak. One guard slowly lifted the lid. The moment it opened, a strong, sour, chemical-like smell filled the air. Stronger than the smell from Harris's rotten meat. Much stronger. The guard slammed the lid shut as fast as he opened it. He gagged, eyes watering, stepping back fast. Something inside that tray wasn't just spoiled. It wasn't even food. A second guard put on gloves and lifted the tray again. This time, they removed the rotten substance with tongs. Under it, flattened into the corner of the tray, was a small folded piece of plastic, the same kind of plastic used to hide messages. The guard lifted it carefully, held it to the light, paused. His face went pale. He whispered to the other officers, "This shouldn't be here." Inside the plastic was a message someone wanted Ramirez to see. But before the guards could react, before they could read it, Ramirez suddenly grabbed his stomach and collapsed onto the floor. His body stiffened. His breath turned short and fast. His eyes rolled back. Something was happening to him. Something caused by what was in that tray. And the entire block watched in horror as the guard shouted for medical backup. Because whatever hit Ramirez, it was worse than rotten food. It was something far more dangerous. A new crisis had begun, and the message inside the tray was still unopened. The folded plastic in Ramirez's tray was more than a piece of trash. Guards carefully opened it under the harsh cell lights. Inside was a tiny piece of paper, folded multiple times. They hesitated to read it aloud. Even the guards felt a chill. When the message was finally unfolded, it contained only 3 words, written in small, neat handwriting. "You're being watched." A shiver ran through Ramirez. A shiver ran through every prisoner in the cell block. Food had always been dangerous, but now it was personal. Every meal tray could be a warning. Every bite could be monitored. Every prisoner could be a target. Word of the note spread quickly through the cell block. Prisoners whispered behind the steel bars. Who wrote it? Was it a guard? Or another inmate? Suspicion grew. Trust vanished. No one ate normally anymore. No one spoke freely. Some prisoners began tearing small bits from their trays to inspect. Others refused to eat at all, letting hunger gnaw at their stomachs rather than risk another warning. Every meal had become a test, and ADX Florence had the power to make them fear it. 2 nights later, Ramirez's new tray arrived. It looked normal. Gray beans, dry bread, meat. But something felt different. He touched the tray lightly with his fingertips. Nothing moved. Nothing smelled unusual. He picked up the spoon and slowly lifted a spoonful of beans. And froze. A small note was tucked under the meat. This one read, "Next time, it won't be just a warning." Ramirez dropped the tray. His body trembled. The fear spread faster than the note itself. The news of the second note traveled like wildfire. Prisoners in nearby cells banged on walls. Some shouted at guards. Some refused to touch their food. The block was in chaos. Even the guards were nervous. They had never seen prisoners so afraid of their meals. Every tray became suspect. Every bite became a gamble. And in the shadows, someone or something was watching. That night, Ramirez finally picked up a small piece of bread. Trembling, he brought it to his mouth and immediately gagged. The bread was different. It smelled rotten, but it wasn't the usual rotten meat or porridge. It was something chemical. He spat it out, but it was too late. The chemical burned his lips. His vision blurred, and a sudden loud alarm echoed through the block. Somewhere in the prison, someone had crossed a line. And now, survival wasn't just about hunger. It was about staying alive. The chemical-tainted bread sent panic through ADX Florence. Sirens screamed. Red lights flashed across the block. Guards rushed toward Ramirez's cell. Medical staff pushed through with a stretcher. Prisoners watched from their tiny windows, terrified. This wasn't just spoiled food anymore. It was an attack. Ramirez was lifted onto the stretcher, his breathing fast and shaky. As they wheeled him out, his hand weakly pointed toward his tray, trying to speak, but no words came out. Something, or someone, wanted him scared. And now they wanted him gone. The warden ordered a full lockdown. No movement. No talking. No food. No one in or out of the kitchen. Guards swept through the kitchen line, searching every corner. The mixers, the sinks, the freezers, the storage rooms. Nothing. But the prisoners were right. Something was happening in the shadows. One guard checked the food logs. Every tray, every time, every inmate. And that's when he saw it. Ramirez's name had been moved on the list. Not by a chef, not by a guard, by someone with access to the system. Someone who wanted his tray to pass through a different line. A line where something could be slipped in unnoticed. While checking the pantry, a young officer spotted something strange. A tiny black dot fixed above the spice shelf. He stepped closer. His eyes widened. It was a camera, a hidden one. He called the others. They found two more, one above the storage closet, another near the meal trays. Someone had been watching the kitchen staff, watching every tray, watching every movement, watching who ate what. Just like the notes had said, "You're being watched." But the message wasn't for the prisoners. It was for the staff. Someone was spying on the kitchen from inside the prison. While guards tore apart the pantry, a senior officer reviewed Ramirez's history. He wasn't violent. He wasn't dangerous. He wasn't a gang member. But he did have one thing. He had worked in food service before coming to ADX, which meant he understood kitchen systems, which meant he could spot mistakes others couldn't, which meant he might have seen something he shouldn't have, something that put him in danger. Ramirez wasn't the attacker. Ramirez was a witness, and the person behind the contaminated trays was trying to silence him. Hours after the lockdown, a guard found Harris, the first inmate who discovered rotten meat, sitting quietly in the corner of his cell. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't shaking. He was calm. Too calm. The guard asked him why he wasn't eating, why he hadn't touched any trays since the incident. Harris slowly lifted his head. His eyes were tired, cold, and he whispered, "They weren't after him." The guard froze. "Who then?" he asked. Harris leaned closer to the cell door. "They were after me." The guard stepped back. "What are you talking about?" Harris continued, voice low and steady. "I saw someone slip a packet into the storage room. I saw it weeks ago. I didn't say anything. I thought it was nothing. But they saw me watching." He swallowed hard. "And now they are sending messages through the food." The guard whispered, "Who is A?" Harris looked straight at him, eyes filled with fear. "Someone in this prison who's not supposed to be here." The kitchen was searched again, top to bottom. This time, they found it. A small stash hidden behind the dry rice sacks. Bottles of spoiled additives, chemical powders, rotten meat sealed inside containers, and dozens of handwritten notes matching the ones in the meal trays. The worst part? The fingerprints didn't match any inmate. They matched a former kitchen employee, a man who was fired months ago, a man who never returned his access card, a man who slipped back in through a contractor door, a man who had been hiding inside the facility for days, using the storage rooms to move unnoticed. Guards stormed the storage tunnels beneath the kitchen, and there he was, a tall figure crouching in the corner, holding a tray, smiling, like he'd been waiting for them. The man tried to run, but guards cornered him, pinned him down, handcuffed him. He laughed quietly as they dragged him out. The warden demanded, "Why the food? Why the prisoners?" The man smirked. "They were supposed to notice," he whispered. "Someone had to." He wasn't poisoning them to kill them. He was poisoning them to send a message about food safety, corruption, and ignored warnings. Twisted, dangerous, but now stopped. The hidden notes, the rotten meals, the contaminated bread, all of it ended. The next morning, breakfast trays arrived untouched. Prisoners stared at them for long minutes. Then, slowly, one by one, they began to eat again. The fear faded, but the memory stayed. ADX Florence went back to normal, silent, cold, tightly controlled. But every inmate and every guard carried the same thought. If the food could be used once, it could be used again. And in a place where meals come through metal doors, you never really know who made your tray or what they put inside.